Today we're taking a quick look at and showing you how to install the front strut and spring assemblies along with the rear shocks and sway bar end links available for all 2011 through 2019 rear wheel drive Charger RT and SEs. Now you should be considering this very affordable kit if you're looking to replace some higher mileage or possibly blown out shocks and struts to get your Charger riding like new again, all for right around that $475 price point. So right off the bat, these options that we're talking about here today will strictly be an OE style replacement as opposed to something that will deliver maybe a firmer ride quality or a lower ride height. Now with that being said, this might be the perfect option for Charger owners out there, possibly looking to return their ride to stock again for whatever reason, or again, maybe just replace some higher mileage blown out dampers with a brand new set to get your RT or SE riding comfortably again and doing so affordably. Now this is a very complete and ready to install kit here thanks to the front coilover setup. Along with the fronts, this will also give you the rear dampers and sway bar end links for both front and rear, which can be a known spot for unwanted clunks in the suspension. Moving into construction, and there's not really a ton to talk about here as this is a stock equivalent, but what you should know is that these twin tube shocks and struts have been manufactured from heavy duty steel and then given a black powder coat for corrosion resistance. Now the fronts again are very complete. They do include a pre-installed coil spring here. No exact word on exact spring rate I should say, but I would imagine it is very close to or identical to the stock spring rate. Finally, the fronts do also receive the pre-installed strut mount, making this a 100% turnkey package for the front, which is ready to be installed without the need for any spring compressors. Now you're also getting the rear shocks as we talked about. Everything has brand new bushings and new hardware, and those end links again do receive brand new bushings and hardware as well. Last but not least, guys, the kit is backed by a 2-year or 24,000-mile warranty in case you run into any issues. Price point for this kit is going to hover just south of that $500 price point overall, which again, for a very complete kit, front and rear end links, the whole 9 yards, this seems pretty reasonable overall. Now with that being said, if you did have your mind maybe on something a little bit more performance oriented, maybe something with a lowering spring instead, definitely check out the rest of our suspension category here at AM before making your final decision. All right, last but not least, let's talk install. And the site's gonna call this a soft 2 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, taking you at least a couple of hours to get in place from start to finish. But now to give you a better idea of how this one might go down on your Charger at home, let's throw it out to the shop for our detailed walkthrough and tool breakdown.
Tools required for this install include a couple different size impact guns, a ratchet, 15, 16, and 21 millimeter ratcheting wrenches, 18 and 19 millimeter wrenches, an extension, swivel adapter, 15, 16, and 18 millimeter swivel sockets, 10, 13, 15, 18, and 21 millimeter sockets, and a pry bar. What's up guys? Today we're installing struts, shocks, and end links on our Charger. First we're going to watch a quick uninstall video showing you how to remove your front strut, and then I'll pick it up with removing our sway bar end link.
First thing we're going to do is loosen this upper control arm nut first, not fully remove it, just loosen it so that we can break it loose. And we're going to be using our 18 millimeter socket and our impact gun. Now that we've got it loose, what we'll do is we'll hit this with a hammer just to break the control arm free from the steering knuckle. Now just be careful not to hit this rubber boot because you don't want to damage it and cause any grease leaks. Now we'll remove our sway bar link nut here using our 21 millimeter socket. Now you may run into a situation like what we have here, where you try to take off that sway bar link nut and the whole thing just spins. If that happens, you can just use a 21 millimeter or a 13/16 millimeter wrench and a 10 millimeter socket and separate the two that way. Now we'll remove our lower strut mount bolt using our 18 millimeter socket. Now we'll remove the upper strut cover cap and 2 of the 13 millimeter nuts, and we'll loosen the third one. Now we can go ahead and remove our upper ball joint nut and then our last remaining strut bolt at the top. Now you can let this hang a little bit, but not too much because of the brake hoses up here. And then we remove that upper nut. Now I like to put this back on just to keep it from flopping around and causing any damage while we're taking care of the rest of it. Now you want to repeat this process for the other side.
So now we can come down to our sway bar and remove the 21mm nut on the bottom end link mount. Take a 21mm socket to pull this out. So now my ball joint's just spinning, so I'm going to take a 21mm ratcheting wrench on the nut and a 10mm socket on the stud. Now I've got my ratcheting wrench to be loosening and my ratchet to be tightening. Now thread that nut the rest of the way off and remove your end link. So now moving on to the rear, I'm going to start with our end link. We've got a bolt up top, bolt at the bottom. The bolt side's going to be a 15, nut side's going to be a 16. So I've got 15 and 16mm ratcheting wrenches to remove that bolt. Now I'm going to do that same thing on our bottom bolt. So now I'm just going to get a pry bar on top of my sway bar, pry down on that until one of my bolts comes out, and then the bottom will come out. Now we can move on to removing our shock. So I'm going to start at our lower shock bolt with a 15mm socket and an 18mm wrench. Now I'll go up top and take a 16mm swivel socket to remove your bolts. So now we need to compress our shock so that we can pop it out. So I'm going to use the top hat up against the top of the shock to push up and then pop it out. And now you can repeat that process on the other side. So now we're ready to get our new front strut into the charger. Now we have new nuts included in the kit for our top studs. However, they are a good bit smaller diameter than the factory ones. So I'm just going to reuse the factory ones. So we got a lot more surface area to bite down onto. So I'm going to grab the strut, thread this on. It's the same thread pitch and diameter as our new nut, so we can use it no problem. So now I'm going to slide this into place, and I'm just going to thread a couple nuts up top on hand tight. So now I'm going to lift up on our knuckle to line up my bolt. Now from the factory, we have a nut welded onto one side of the strut. On this one we don't, so we have a nut included in the kit that's going to thread onto the other side of that bolt. And then thread your nut on the other side. Now grab an 18mm socket on the bolt side and a 21mm wrench on the nut side and tighten that down. Now I'm going to pop off my caliper hook and then reconnect my upper control arm ball joint. And then I'm going to take an 18mm swivel socket and tighten that down. So now we can install our new sway bar end link. We've got new nuts included in the kit for those. So thread those on. And then you can take a 21mm socket to tighten these down. I'm using a swivel adapter just to make it a little bit easier to get this bottom one. So now my ball joint's just spinning. So we do have a 19mm nut right in between the ball joint and the sway bar that we can hold with a 19mm wrench. And then I'm just going to do the same thing on the other one. So now I'm going to come back up top and thread on my last nut And then I'm gonna take a 13mm socket and tighten all of these down. And then if you have your cover, you can just line that up with your studs and pop it on. So now moving on to the rear, I'm gonna start with swapping over the top hat from our shock to our new one. So I've got a 15mm socket here to remove that nut, and then we can pop that off. And then you can slide that off. You're not gonna need the metal washer at the top because we do have new ones. So you're gonna take your first metal washer and slide it on with the curve going upwards, and then your top hat. And then your second metal washer with the curve going downwards, and then the nut. And then I switched to a 17mm socket for my new nut, and we'll tighten that down. Now do that same thing for your other shock, and we'll get these on the charger. So now I'm ready to install our shock. Once again, I'm gonna have to compress this before I put it in, and then I'm just gonna angle it in, get it in my upper mount, and then drop it into my lower control arm. So I'm gonna compress that as far as it can go. And then I've got my bolt so that I can just slide that right through. Now we can go up top and thread in our 2 bolts. And then I'll grab my 16mm swivel socket to tighten those down. So now we'll go back down to our lower shock bolt, put our nut back on, and then take a 15mm socket and 18mm wrench and tighten that down. So now we can install our new sway bar end link. So I'm just gonna pass it through the gap there, get my lower bolt in, thread on my nut. And then I'm gonna take my pry bar again to pry down on my sway bar and line up my end link. Thread on your nut. And then you're gonna take a 15 and 16mm ratcheting wrench to tighten down both of your bolts. And then you can repeat that process on the other side. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the front struts and rear shocks with sway bar links for your 2011 to 19 rear wheel drive Charger RT and SE. Thank you for watching, and for all things Charger, keep it right here at AmericanMuscle.com.